What you think about that, Daddy 98?
I like it.
A little Dr. Dre action on National Signing Day? Gets you in the mood?
Old school, man.
All right, Taylor Ham, GigEm247.com, bringing you guys a National Signing Day podcast. Had to bring in my man, Daddy 98. We're going to talk, of course, about what transpired here today. Not the best finish for the Aggies, but still looking like they're going to ink potentially a top 20 class. Really have a lot to cover. I think we're just going to get right into it. Paul, your thoughts on today and how things went down?
Well, there's no question that if you think emotionally speaking, it left a lot to be desired. I think a lot of people have a lot of anger inside them right now. There's no question about that. There's always a positive side. It's hard to feel the positive side because Januaries are not positive for A&M. I do think there's a lot of good core players that we signed that we had for a long time that didn't waver. We can go over that. It's missing some holes, but I think there's some good solid players in this. And I think we'll have. I think at the end it'll end up being better than the 13 class, which on paper was very attractive, but it certainly isn't on numbers and depth.
At first, I guess we got to tackle just the Texas class and how those guys were able to, essentially almost sweep the table, so to speak. We need to go over this timeline from December to today and how much the perception of Kevin Sumlin not only floating his name around in the NFL, but the losses of Kyle Allen, of course, Kyler Murray, their transfers, and how that impacted this class ultimately.
Well, as you know, Ham, I talked to a few different guys, a few different coaches, a few different people, and there's no question that the A&M gave other teams a lot of negative ammo to shoot us with, and it seemed like they shot us well. I mean, and I spoke directly with a coach last night, very close to a few very important recruits, and I can tell you that coach, who's their high school coach, said that particularly Texas really just hammered it home to a point that it was very difficult, I think, for us to recover.
Yeah, and I don't think people really realize how much of an impact not only, losing Kyle Allen, but really Kyler Murray had on this program. Ultimately, losing 2 5-star quarterbacks within a week is enough damage, but when Kyler Murray is the official visit host of Brandon Jones, and then he leaves a couple weeks later, and how does that not leave a terrible taste in your mouth if you're a recruit going, why is the son of Kevin Murray, the myth, the legend that Kyler Murray is, leaving the program after one season? I mean, that just, to me, I don't understand how people don't really realize like how much of an impact that really made on this program and the recruiting effort.
Well, I think it's even a little bit more than that. If you remember, Brandon Jones visited officially, I believe, in December, 11th or something?
Yeah.
And Kyler left before the bowl game. It was obviously before Christmas, so it had to be in the next week or two he left.
Yeah.
So A&M, if they would have known that Kyler Murray was going to leave, they would not have had him host one of their top 2 or 3 recruits. So that was a bad strategic move by itself. And that just kind of goes into the problems we have right now as a program that I don't think we're very organized.
Yeah, I've kind of have some for me, some key components. I have like 5 different things so far that I've been able to write down, and I feel like has really impacted A&M's recruiting. You know, obviously the perception of Kevin Sumlin right now, recruits families having about, you know, the head man in charge in Aggieland is not favorable, and so that's why we've seen guys like Eric Cuffey go from a silent commitment to Texas A&M. His dad told me it was done. They have told Kevin that they're going, and then just the bottom fell out, and we know why that happened. There were some things, some videos that have emerged. There were some things being said about his future there. And then you have the quarterbacks leaving. But the perception about Kevin Sumlin right now, I think, is so bad amongst, at least it was with this 2016 class, that none of these kids are buying into what they're selling. And they all rallied around Charlie Strong and that staff for some reason. That's 11-14 in 2 seasons in Austin, and they decided, hey, we can make a difference there. And so, what does that say to you about Kevin Sumlin right now in the eyes of recruits?
Well, I mean, we know that Texas is doing some things that probably we don't know what does things, but I think everybody can convey to that. But there's no question that they created a strategic plan, and this is well orchestrated. You can tell with the number of kids that they landed today that this wasn't just a shot in the dark, hey, we flipped this kid. They had an orchestrated effort to sign several players. They targeted, they had this done. But what's tragic is they did this 2 years in a row to us, and we weren't prepared again. And, I think the greatest tragedy in this class, I think there's a lot of good football players in this class. The greatest tragedy isn't losing Brandon Jones at the end. It isn't losing Jeffrey McCulloch at the end. It's that we didn't have any backup plans. We don't have a safety committed right now in this class. A lot of people think Akini Akiki is, but I think he's growing into a linebacker. He's pretty big, and that's what I'm kind of conveyed, that I think he's other people have conveyed this, that he's going to probably grow into, either a tweener, or some kind of, maybe the way we use Donovan a little bit. But
yeah, he's 6'2", 200 pounds right now.
Yeah, 6'1", I think, too. We don't have another safety committed. I mean, we went all in on Brandon Jones again. Well, there's some good DBs and good safeties that we didn't take, that we waited.
Oh, yeah. Paul, Deontay Anderson's dad told me that's where he wanted to go. This was just about a week ago, and they were very upset that Texas A&M backed off of them. And this is the same guy that told me that Jeffrey McCulloch wanted to commit to Texas A&M at the Under Armour game. That was also conveyed by Coach Showers there. So, I mean, a lot of misses here for A&M, and, big time for safety, as you mentioned, with Okiki maybe growing out of it. Clifford Chapman, a guy that, they're recruiting at safety, more of a rover type, but, as a true safety, you're on the right track there.
Yeah, I mean, he checked in at 6'5", 190. I just don't see how a kid with that kind of length is going to stay at safety. Maybe there's a way that it can play him as he kind of really, to me, plays the same role as Akina Akiki. So you got another issue, we're going to lose at least 2 safeties next year, and there's a chance we lose 3. And we never know what Justin Dunning, to what his body, just his raw athleticism. And we all know he's a stud, but how is he going to handle another year in the off season growing with weights? I mean, at some point you overgrow the position. And there were several DBs out there this year that we just said, hey, we don't want you. We don't want to touch you. Ennis Gaines, Chance Sylvie. I mean, just several kids that we just said, we're not going to get on you. And which is fine if you land the kids you want, but there's no backup plan. And to me, that's the story missing in the class is what have we been doing from the summer to now in recruiting. I thought we did one thing right. We watched Deesh a couple, 2-3 games, saw what we wanted and offered, and I think we got a very good future tackle there that I think, as he gains some weight, can probably be a very good starter. But other than that guy, it didn't seem like the whole fall we did anything. I mean, that's the best information you're going to have on a football player is what they do their senior years. Honestly, Brandon Jones didn't have a great senior year. He had a good senior year. He's a great prospect. Maybe he's still recovering from the PCL injury the year before. But we went all in on that guy and said we're willing to lose everybody else. And I don't understand that logic.
Yeah, and I think that segues for me.
He's never going to not come to a school because you have another kid committed unless it's at quarterback. And if it is, then there's no business recruiting the guy.
I want to talk to you about just the approach the staff has taken. That was my second point of emphasis here on just kind of the key component that just kind of led to this little collapse here down the stretch. But I feel like there's kind of a lack of talent or lack of vision with the recruiting support staff inside the Bright complex. And I think you would agree with me there. They're not utilizing all the resources that are available to them. They're not thinking outside of the box. They're not staying proactive like Kevin Sumlin says he likes to be. And I think at this point the proof's in the pudding with that.
I don't think there's any question about that. I've been a big proponent. Alabama has the most recruiting staff in the country, and I think that the more we do things like they do and try to be better than them at those things, the better we'll be. They have twice as many offers as we do, and they have a better hit rate when they want to get the player. So we need to be offering even more than that. I'm in sales, and it's a numbers game. We didn't have a lot of options at the end here because of numbers. We brought in a JUCO tight end the last week of signing day, or last weekend before signing day. We offered him whether it was Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, I don't know. But that was an Indiana commit. I mean, I don't know where he's originally from, but I don't think it was Indiana. But we're a better offer. But he had been committed since December. And it's like from whenever we decided that we were going to move a different direction offensively, someone just said, hey, I'm going to take off and when I get the new coach, let him make decisions. And I just don't understand that logic. I don't understand logic. I think we could have easily had this young man. We knew Irv Smith was taking visits. And if Irv Smith is going to say, well, if you take another tight end, well, we lost Zarian Holcomb back in, October, November, Ham? So we already knew we needed a second tight end. We ended up getting 0 tight ends. So that tells me, and then, there's some buzz that we really... There was some buzz that we thought the JUCO tight end was our top, JUCO tight end on the board. Well, we had already lost Zarian Holcomb like in October, November, so we had a need for a tight end. If we felt that he was that good, I mean, what are we doing in the first week of January, second week of January? We brought him in at the last weekend, and what do we expect the young man to do? I mean, the guy's probably honored his commitment for a month. That just doesn't show a good strategy in place in order to get players. Did we really think that Irv Smith was going to stick with us? He had been visiting other schools from December on, so I just didn't understand that logic.
Yeah, and that kind of, leads me into my next point of emphasis here. I feel like there's just no clear or concise recruiting plan. And I don't know what reason that is. I'm sure that they have a plan. I'm not saying that they don't. Obviously, a college football program like Texas A&M has a recruiting plan, but is it the right one, and is it being executed the way that they want it to be executed? Obviously not.
Well, obviously there's always a plan. But there's a plan that's well thought of with lots of strategy that takes time. And then there's a plan that's just put together very quickly that doesn't show a lot of, but at the end of the day, it's a results-oriented business. You can do nothing and land the best kids and say yay, and you can do a lot and not get the kids and say nay. And so But there's no question that this year the whole strategy just seemed off. We slow played many kids. We acted like we were going to win 11, 12 games and win the SEC, and thought all these kids are just going to run to us. We passed on several really good football players that I think would have helped us. And once again, we didn't seem to stay in touch during the fall and recruit our backup plans. I think the greater tragedy of the class, because I think there's some good players, it's not losing Brandon Jones, Jeffrey McCulloch. It's how many scholarships, once again, we left on the table. We need 6, 7, 8, 10 more players on this roster. Midterm signing day, we didn't sign one JUCO midterm kid. You can say, well, Paul, they're not any good, they're not very bright. I don't care. We had holes, and we had scholarships from last year's signing day that I think I calculated we had 8 available midterm spots that we could sign. And when you get that midterm guy, not only do you count the scholarship back, you give the chance to play that year much better because you get 8 months of strength and conditioning, freshman or whatever. Trey Baldwin was committed to Missouri, was a midterm signing day, and Missouri had all that racial issues and stuff, and he was available. And whether you liked him at tight end, H-back, linebacker, defensive end, he's a kid you could have gotten. It would have cost you nothing. You wouldn't have had to explain to anybody. All you'd have to say is, Trey, we're bringing you as an athlete. We think you're great. You're going to play here in midterm. And I think he was looking for a new home. And by not taking kids like him, you leaving out numbers on this roster. I don't think you always have to have 5 stars to win, but you do need depth. You need competition. You need healthy bodies, and you need numbers. And we don't have numbers in a lot of positions again.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much nailed it right there. For me, when I look at this class, like you said, there's a lot of really great players. You look at guys like Justin Matabuke, Tyrell Dotson, Charles Oliver, Travin Fuller. There's some great dudes on defense that are going to continue to help build that depth on the side of the ball which A&M has struggled greatly over the past few years. Obviously, they made strides under year one under Coach Chavis. And Chief did some great things there, but offensively, not going and getting a Greg Little and not being able to get back in the mix for a Patrick Hudson, and when they're clearly trying to continue to upgrade that spot, they've tried to go and get Juwan Williams. They were targeting some other guys that didn't really reciprocate any interest in them. But if I think there's potential for this team to be decent next year if they can get some protection up front and quarterback play, because the guys that you're bringing back next season, I feel like with the class coming in, there's potential there for them to go make some noise in the SEC next year.
Well, absolutely, and that's, again, the reason why you got to get it while the kid's good. And we got very fortunate that Jermaine Ifedi's the only guy that left. You got Ricky Seals coming back, even though he needed to come back. But I think Josh Reynolds coming back. So far, Speedy's coming back. So far, Tavio looks like he's coming back. The defensive end, Deshaun Hall's coming back. Halaka's going to give it another run with his health. So you had a lot of guys that are coming back that I think that you could very well could have lost. That Justin Evans is coming back. So you have a ton of good ball players coming back. That the worst thing on this class to me is not adding a few extra guys. Greg Little, what does he do for your offensive line? He'd have been an anchor for it. He allows you to either put him behind Genesee and be the starter next year, or go to right tackle and make Coda Martin have to be really good to start. Now you're forced to say it's Coda or kind of, I don't know, Ryan Lindblade. You don't have a lot of competition there. And I think I think losing Greg Little and Hudson and not getting one of them is the biggest miss in the class. I really do. I think if we had both committed at one time, that means they both bought into something we were selling, and to lose both is just that's a rough one to get around.
Yeah, and what for me. I'm trying to figure out too, just the approach here, and the staff at times having an inability to get accurate reads on prospects and families. At times, and I don't know how you feel about it, but I think there are times where I feel like they're a little bit more optimistic. They feel like they can get kids at the last minute. They try to do it last year. I talked to a high school coach earlier today that just was kind of frustrated with the approach A&M has taken over the past couple of years, trying to backdoor some kids and try to get some guys in late. But they tried to do it with Henry Black last year. So what needs to change there in terms of just their approach as a staff? When they're kind of evaluating where they stand with prospects.
Well, my big belief, and I'm in sales, I'm in relationships, I'm in running a business, and the biggest thing is it's a numbers game at the end of the day, okay? And then the second thing is it's a relationship game, and you have to say to yourself, I'm not going to be outworked or out-relationshiped, meaning when I start recruiting a kid, I need to know who this young man is inside. I need to know his family. I need to know his decision makers. I need to constantly be reestablishing and reconnecting with this young man and his family so that I don't get left at the altar in January. And we're getting left at the altar in January because we're dealing with kids we hadn't been on. I mean, I didn't see where Hansford signed today. It didn't seem like it's been us. Maybe, I don't see if he went to UCLA or not. But that kid we just started recruiting 2 weeks ago. Now, Mazzoni did, but you get the point. That's not a really well-established relationship.
Yeah, and A&M just actually, while we're talking, offered a graduate offensive tackle from Iowa State, Tyler Catalina. So we're going to be tracking that down. But it just shows further that that they're not really confident at that position, and they feel like they need to upgrade it.
Oh, there's no question. Offensive line is really weak, and it's the biggest reason that I'm a big Trevor Knight fan. Not as far as I think he's a game changer, but he's everything that we haven't had at the quarterback since the kind of like the Stephen McGee. Now, before everybody gets all ruffled up about Stephen, people forget what kind of leader he was for the team. And Trevor's going to be a guy that is, the mortar that keeps the bricks together. And, he's a talented kid. He's going to work as hard as anybody. He's a leader. He comes from a winning program, And I like that. But offensive line was the weakest part of the team last year, and we lost 3 guys. And I keep telling everybody, if you didn't like those guys, are we going to like the guys replacing them that are younger, that have no reps? I mean, I like McCoy's film, but we're going to have a redshirt freshman with 0 snaps taken. The snaps at center, and he wasn't a highly recruited kid. Now maybe he's a super great player. And what if he gets hurt? How do we feel about the backup to him? I mean, I don't understand that.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. There seems to be a lack of planning, like I said, with the staff about what their depth looks like, and the guys coming in. You have to remember that the Lufkin boy has never taken a snap at center before live. I mean, he played tackle for the Panthers. So I mean,
that's right. He didn't even play center. He played tackle at Lufkin, and I think he's going to be a good player. Don't get me wrong, but man, that's a huge step to say next year you're going to be starting against the next 330-pound 5-star nose tackle that Bama has on right at 3 inches from his face at snap. I don't know if there's a grad transfer some way out there, but I sure hope we can find one, And there's just a lot of things that's the part of the class that doesn't make sense. It's not is Charles Oliver. I love Charles Oliver. I love Kyle Deesh. Matt Ibuki is as good as any D lineman in the state. I think Arthur Robinson, if someone can coach him up, keep it, inside his head, he's got better tape than Mark Jackson. He's a better football player. We got some good players. Dotson is a leader. Got to keep him light, but he's a leader. Give Fuller some weight on. But, I don't think there's a lot of what I call instant superstars. But I think the biggest thing is just numbers. I mean, how good would you feel if there's a JUCO center coming in to compete with McCoy, just in case?
Yeah.
I think that, our JUCO tight end, just to make sure Jordan Davis to give him some competition. Jordan's been kind of known to be not the hardest worker, not always in the greatest shape. Well, he's got no competition now. So you want to bring in competition, if anything, to make them better. So, those are definitely those questions that you just scratch your head on.
All right, so finally, wrapping this up, how does Summerlin get back the momentum? Is it just winning? Is it coming out and kind of changing the approach? I don't know really what the answers are there, but I mean, something's got to change. I have an idea what I would change, but I want to get your take on it.
Well, it's a hard one with Sullivan because there's a lot of red flags in his coaching right now. But if he wants to get back, the first thing he's got to do, in my opinion, swallow some pride and go get some recruiting infrastructure. Go get some, just like Alabama has, go get some recruiters that are either coaches in between jobs or they're former coaches that have a lot of skins on the wall, but the game's past their time as far as recruiting and such. And get them in there and be the first guy on recruits. Know them backwards and forwards. Evaluate them like you do, a woman that you're ready to marry, and know them backwards and forwards. And trust their evaluations and opinions, because obviously you're not willing to do that. Beat Alabama in offers. Go recruit nationally harder with numbers. Even if you're not going to get the kids, you got to put in the legwork. And then the second thing is make a clear strategy of what kind of players you're looking for. At every position, say, this is what I'm looking for. So you give your recruiters, they go look for these players when they're in their areas. Hey, I'm looking for outside linebackers. I want them to be lengthy. I want them to be at least 6'2" and rangy, or whatever it is. My defensive ends, I don't care about size. I want them to come off the ball like Von Miller. We're looking for those guys. Put out what you're looking for. Have a game plan. Look at it with numbers. Figure out how many kids you want to have committed by the end of summer. Know which kids, when a kid wants to, you get that feeling he's going to be a Jeffrey McCulloch and Brandon Jones and wait till sign day, say, hey, how long am I going to wait on this kid, or do I have a backup plan? And then in the fall, be the quickest evaluators of senior talent. There are a lot of great football players that emerge their senior year. Donovan Wilson's one of those guys. He was not recruited well, and a lot of schools are on those guys. And you gotta use a JUCO rank. Sometimes not because they're smart or they're the best players. Sometimes you just need the competition and number with a guy that's a junior.
That was kind of like a mic drop moment for you.
I don't know if it's. I don't think anything like that. But I think everybody's disappointed because I think we're so close, but we're so far as a program. We get there and then we pull back, and we don't go through the wall and keep going. And I think that's what's disappointing for a lot of people. We're not dog crap. But we could be. I don't think anybody's really mad at the record with someone right now. I mean, his winnings and losses. We're not happy, but the problem is you see what he inherited, and we got lucky. Whether it was Sherman was good or we were just lucky, but there was a lot of high draft picks on that team, and we won big that first year, and we recruited off of it, and we had a lot of good-looking young talent, and we missed on a lot of those evaluations, and we mishandled the roster and the depth. And it shows a lack of leadership and vision. Kids shouldn't have to transfer that often. If you got the relationship and you build them a program of where they're going to play, when they're going to play, how you're going to use them. And I think that relates to the quarterback position. I know we're going back in a circle, but when both your quarterbacks leave, and I think everybody kind of understands, they didn't just leave. They left with their ass hanging out the window pointed at us. It was offensive to them, meaning something happened where there was no love lost when they left. And you can't be with one of the quarterbacks that hosted your 4- or 5-star safety that was visiting. So you obviously didn't have a good read on that. And I think that's part of the stuff that a leader, a head coach has to know. He's got to know the state of his flock, as the scripture says. He's got to know every area of his team. He can let them coach it, but he's got to know where everything is. You can't be taken off your game because somebody's doing something. And I think somebody mentioned this. I don't think there should be a day that goes by, but at least weekly there should be a recruiting meeting that's extensive, that's talking about your current recruits, your best targets, and with the people that are evaluating new prospects, bringing in the top 2 or 3 new guys that they see, say, hey, have you reevaluated this person? We're a little bit light at safety. Is there a safety popping up in Louisiana or Texas that we can get our hands on? I think that needs to be done, if not daily, weekly.
Yeah,
where there's a conscientious effort. Excuse me.
I completely agree. And for me, when you're not going to get Brandon Jones, whether or not he made a decision this morning, you saw that there was a decent chance that wasn't going to happen. You saw that in December after those guys left. There should have been some signs there. How do you not bring in a guy like Deontay Anderson, who wanted to go to A&M, whose dad told me he wanted to go to A&M, whose dad was calling me from Orlando at the Under Armour game? I get it that when you look at his body, and I know this is how A&M feels because I heard them talk about it, that they feel like he's going to outgrow the position. But you're talking about a state 200-meter champion at his size.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, I've talked to some coaches that seen the guy play. I understand he's not the most physical guy. He's not going to come down and want to crack Leonard Fournette's.
No, he's not. He's not.
But you know what? I watched the 2 high school high school games that were on TV in Houston, and I can tell you this: he's the best coverage safety in the state. On pure coverage, he covers better than anybody there's out there. And I don't. Why are we so greedy that we can't take this young man? We're going to worry we're going to lose Brandon Jones. Well, how many DBs did Texas take last year? I mean, they had a pretty good DB class last year. Holton Hill, Chris Boyd, the kid from Miami Northwestern. They had the Elliott kid, Jason Hall's there. I mean, it's not like they're hurting. They got a pretty good DB class. So, in addition, Kofi, helped recruit him. I think Brandon Jones is going to take his position. So I don't understand the logic that we have so much depth that we can't take a kid. I think that's just another failed strategy. You got to use that in your pitch that we're going to take kids and you're going to compete with kids. And like Sherman even said, competition makes you better. And you have to have that ingrained in your sales pitch. Hey, you know what? There is a time you can get stupid with numbers, but, we're not like that at any position. The best players are going to play. I understand quarterback position. You can only have one guy. Even running backs. There's some talk if we got Penniman, the Boyd may leave. Hey, man, if you hadn't noticed, we had one running back most of last year that was on scholarship. One. He graduated. The other guy's been chronically hurt. We have one transfer guy, and we have 2 guys that one guy had a pretty serious health injury, and another guy had an ACL tear. I wouldn't depend on anybody that's on the roster at running back right now. So, to me, would you rather compete against this freshman I'm bringing in with a guy that also, if Keith Ford is as good as we hope he is, he's a 4th-year junior. I mean, he may be gone out the door. So, to me, I didn't understand the logic of why we couldn't take even 3 running backs. I mean, if you have a 5-star, that's one thing. But anyway, I would have liked to have taken that junior college kid, Hansford or whatever his name was. Not Hansford. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. The kid from
Crawford.
Justin Crawford from Northwest Mississippi Community College. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, good stuff. Real good stuff.
Well, let's end with one thing. I always leave with a little bit of a positive note. A lot of people are going to hear a lot of, probably emotional, a little anger. There's a lot of good football players in this class. I think that's missing the boat. I think that they need to be, well commended. A lot of kids have stuck with us, and many of us are very proud that they're Aggies. I think there's some very good football players. I think they're going to be the type that stay with the program. They need to be developed, grow some size, fill out. But there's some good leaders. I just still can't get over the not trying to add on to it with some other kids, and particularly midterm sign-in day. That was the one that was the biggest head scratcher to me. That I think that would have complemented this class very well. So,
great. Well, appreciate the time.
All right, man.